Chapter 1. The Wrong Door. The platform was empty when Tegwin stumbled onto it, breathless and bleeding. She pressed her hand against the torn sleeve of her traveling dress, feeling the warm seep of blood where her stepbrother's knife had grazed her. Behind her, somewhere in the fog-choked streets of the border town, Gareth would be searching. He would check the inns first, then the coaching stations. He would find her if she remained here much longer. The clock tower struck midnight, each chime reverberating through her chest like a death knell. 3 carriages waited in the mist, their black lacquer surfaces gleaming wet under the gaslight. Tegwin had paid for passage on the northbound coach, the middle one, the ticket master had said. 3rd door from the lamppost. But the fog made counting impossible, and her vision blurred with exhaustion. She chose the nearest carriage and wrenched open the door. The interior swallowed her whole. Darkness so complete it felt textured, alive. The scent struck her immediately, old leather, snow-cold stone, and something else. Something metallic and faintly sweet, like copper left in rain. "I paid my fare," she gasped, collapsing onto the velvet bench. "Please, just go. Drive anywhere. Now." The carriage didn't move. Slowly, her eyes adjusted. Across from her, a figure sat perfectly still in the shadows. Tall. Impossibly still. Not even the slight rise and fall of breathing disturbed the air. "You've made a mistake," a voice said. Low. Precise. Each word shaped with the care of someone who had forgotten what haste felt like. Tegwin's throat closed. She gripped the door handle behind her, but her fingers felt numb, clumsy. I'll find another carriage. I apologize." Too late. The figure leaned forward, and moonlight from the window caught his face. Beautiful. The word rose unbidden in her mind, followed immediately by wrong. His features were carved with the kind of perfection that didn't occur in nature. Sharp cheekbones, a mouth that looked cruel even in repose, eyes so dark they seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His skin held the pallor of winter itself, and his black hair fell past his collar in waves that suggested centuries rather than years. "You've crossed into my territory," he continued, and something in his tone made the words feel ancient. "A law older than kingdoms. The moment you entered this carriage, you became mine." "I'm no one's." Tegwin's voice shook, but she forced herself to meet those impossible eyes. "I belong to myself." A pause. Then, unexpectedly, the corner of his mouth lifted. Not quite a smile, more like the memory of one. "Do you? He tilted his head, and the movement was too fluid, lacking the small imperfections of human motion. "Then why are you running? And why are you bleeding?" Her hand flew to her arm before she could stop herself. In the confined space, the scent of her blood must be overwhelming. She watched his nostrils flare slightly, saw his jaw tighten with what might have been restraint or hunger. "An accident," she whispered. "A lie." He studied her with the focus of a predator deciding whether prey was worth the chase. "You have approximately 4 minutes before the man hunting you reaches this platform." I can hear his heartbeat 3 streets away. Frantic, determined, he carries a blade still wet with someone else's blood. Ice flooded her veins. "How could you possibly—" "Because I am very old," he interrupted softly, "and very good at surviving. Which brings us to your dilemma, Miss." "Tegwin," she swallowed. "Tegwin Bryn. Miss Bryn." He spoke her name, like he was tasting it. "I am Count Anurin of the House of Shadows, and you have 3 choices. 1. Leave this carriage now and face whoever pursues you. 2. Remain here under my protection, which comes with a price. 3. Run, and spend the rest of your very short life looking over your shoulder." The carriage suddenly felt smaller. The air, thicker. Tegwin's heart hammered against her ribs so hard she thought it might break through. "What price?" she managed. Anurin's eyes gleamed. In the darkness, they caught light that shouldn't exist, reflecting crimson for just an instant before returning to black. 7 nights, he said. "Spend 7 nights in my estate, and I will ensure that no harm comes to you from mortal hands. After that, you may leave freely, unharmed, with resources enough to disappear properly. Or," he paused, letting the word hang between them like a blade, "you may choose to stay longer." "Why?" Tegwin's mind raced. "Why would you help me?" "Because I am curious." He leaned back, and the shadows seemed to embrace him. "It has been a very long time since someone stumbled into my world by accident. Most who seek me out want something immortality, power, revenge." "You wanted escape," That interests me. Outside, footsteps echoed on cobblestone. Fast, getting closer. And if I refuse? Tegwin asked, though she already knew the answer. Then I will forget I ever saw you, and you will deal with your hunter alone. Anurin's voice held no malice, only cold fact. But I should mention he's brought friends, 3 of them, all armed. The footsteps grew louder. Voices now, calling her name. Tegwin closed her eyes, saw her mother's face, pale in death. Saw Gareth standing over her father's body, inheritance papers already drawn. Saw the small grave at the edge of the property where her younger sister slept beneath wildflowers. She had nothing left to lose. Nothing but her life, which already felt like a ghost's existence. 7 nights, she whispered, opening her eyes. No more. Anurin's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. Then we have an accord. He rapped his knuckles once against the carriage wall. Immediately, the vehicle lurched into motion with impossible speed, the horses screaming as they bolted forward. Tegwin was thrown back against the seat, her wound reopening, fresh, blood staining the velvet. The Count watched the crimson spread with an expression she couldn't read. You should bind that, he said quietly. The scent is distracting. Do you intend to drink from me? The question escaped before fear could stop it. Anurin was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had changed softer, almost gentle, which somehow made it more dangerous. Not without your permission, Miss Bryn. I am many things, but I am not a thief. He reached into his coat and produced a square of black silk, pristine and cool. Tie this. Tight. We have a long journey ahead. Tegwin took the silk with trembling fingers. As she wrapped her wound, she felt his gaze on her steady, ancient, patient. The carriage raced through the night, leaving the fog and the hunters far behind, and Tegwin realized, with a chill that had nothing to do with temperature, that she had just traded one prison for another. But this time, the bars were made of shadow and ancient promise. And the keeper of her cage had eyes that remembered when the world was young. Chapter 2. The Threshold. The estate emerged from the darkness like a beast rising from water. Tegwin pressed her face to the carriage window, watching as iron gates swung open without touch, without sound. The drive beyond stretched impossibly long, lined with trees so old their branches twisted into shapes that suggested reaching hands. At the end of this corridor of shadows stood the manor itself. 3 stories of black stone and shattered elegance, windows like hollow eyes, towers that clawed at the storm-heavy sky. It's dying, she whispered. So am I, Anurin replied from his corner of darkness. We suit each other. The carriage stopped at the entrance, where marble steps had cracked like broken teeth. The door opened before either of them moved, and cold wind rushed in, carrying the scent of roses long dead and earth freshly turned. Tegwin hesitated. Afraid? The Count's voice held a challenge, cautious. She forced herself to step down, her boots crunching on gravel mixed with frost. November had teeth here, sharper than in the town she'd fled. There's a difference. Indeed. Anurin descended after her with movements too graceful to be natural, his coat billowing around him like wings. Come, you'll want to see your prison properly. He led her up the steps to a door of carved oak, its surface decorated with symbols she couldn't name, circles and crescents, thorned branches and weeping faces. He placed his palm against the wood, and Tegwin heard something click deep within, locks tumbling open in sequence like a mechanical heart restarting. No servants? She asked. None living. He pushed the door wide. I find the dead make better company. They ask fewer questions. Inside, candlelight bloomed without source. One moment the entrance hall was dark. The next it was illuminated by dozens of candles in crystal sconces, their flames perfectly still despite the ripotter, wind outside. The space was vast marble floors and black and white checkerboard, a double staircase curving upward like ribs, and everywhere, portraits. Faces watching from ornate frames, their eyes following her movement. Your family? Tegwin asked, trying to keep her voice steady. My victims. Anurin's tone was flat. I paint everyone I kill. It's the closest I come to mourning. She spun to face him, hand instinctively moving to where her wound throbbed beneath the silk bandage. He laughed a sound like glass breaking underwater. I'm joking, Miss Bryn. They're my ancestors. Or what passes for such when you've existed as long as I have. He moved past her toward the stairs, his reflection absent in the massive mirror that dominated one wall. Though I have killed enough to fill 3 galleries, Perhaps 4. Tegwin stood frozen, heart hammering. Was he joking now too? His face offered no answer, beautiful and remote as a statue's. Your room is this way, he continued, already ascending. I assume you'd prefer quarters that lock from the inside? Yes. She forced her legs to move, following him upstairs that were too cold, too perfect. Nothing creaked, nothing settled. The house felt held in stasis, preserved like an insect in amber. They walked down a corridor lined with more portraits, more candles that appeared from nowhere. Tegwin's exhaustion made the painted eyes seem to blink, the shadows seemed to breathe. She focused on Anurin's back instead, the way his coat moved with each step, the fall of his black hair against his collar. He walked like someone who had forgotten what it meant to be vulnerable. Here. He stopped before a door painted deep blue, the only color she'd seen in the entire estate. This was someone's room, once. It's been empty a long time. You'll find everything you need. Clothes in the wardrobe, water in the basin. The bed is clean. Was? Tegwin touched the door handle, feeling warmth where everything else felt. Cold. Whose room? Anurin's jaw tightened. For the first time, she saw something human flicker across his features. Pain, maybe, or its ancient echo. Someone who made a different choice than you will. He stepped back. Lock the door. Don't open it unless you're certain it's me on the other side. How will I know? Because I'll tell you something only the two of us know. His dark eyes met hers, and she saw depths there that made her dizzy. A secret for a secret, Miss Bryn. That's how trust is built between predator and prey. I'm not prey, she said, lifting her chin. Then what are you? The question hung between them like smoke. Tegwin didn't have an answer, and they both knew it. Rest, Anurin said finally, turning away. We'll speak more tomorrow. And Miss Bryn? He paused without looking back. That wound needs proper care. There's a medical kit in the left dresser drawer. Use it. I can smell infection starting, and gangrene is such a tedious way to die. He left, before she could respond, his footsteps fading impossibly fast down the corridor. Tegwin stood alone in the hallway, candles burning without heat, portraits watching without blinking. She entered the blue room and locked the door behind her, testing the bolt twice, before releasing a breath she hadn't known she was holding. The room was beautiful. Too beautiful. A 4-poster bed draped in white silk, walls covered in damask wallpaper, the color of twilight, a window overlooking gardens gone wild under the moon, and on the vanity, a silver hairbrush with strands of copper hair still tangled in its bristles. Someone had lived here. Someone with hair the color of autumn leaves. Tegwin found the medical kit where he'd promised and cleaned her wound properly, hissing at the burn of alcohol. The cut was deeper than she'd thought, angry red at the edges. She bound it with fresh linen and sank onto the bed, bones aching with exhaustion. Outside, wind howled against the windows. Inside, the blighted Otaga, candles continued their silent vigil. And somewhere in the vast darkness of the estate, she heard music, a piano, playing something sad and ancient and impossibly beautiful. She should have been afraid. Instead, she closed her eyes and let the melody carry her toward sleep, wondering what secret she would trade tomorrow, and what truth the vampire count would offer in return. Chapter 3. Morning in Shadow. Tegwin woke to darkness and the smell of lavender. For a disorienting moment, she thought herself back in her mother's room, listening for the wheeze of failing lungs. Then memory crashed down the platform, the carriage, the count with eyes like empty wells. She sat up too quickly, head spinning. The room was unchanged, but someone had entered while she slept. On the bedside table sat a tray, tea in a porcelain cup, still steaming, bread that looked fresh, a bowl of winter apples, and a single white rose in a crystal vase. No note, no explanation. Tegwin's fingers shook as she reached for the tea, then stopped. What if it was drugged? What if it's not poisoned? She yelped, spinning toward the voice. Anurin stood by the window, perfectly still, perfectly shadowed. How long had he been there? She hadn't heard the door, hadn't heard breathing, hadn't heard anything. You said the door was locked, she accused, pulling the blanket higher. It is. He turned slightly, and she realized he was looking out rather than in, his profile cutting sharp against the gray light filtering through the glass. I don't need doors, Miss Bryn. This is my home. Its walls know me better than my own skin. Then the lock is useless. The lock is a courtesy. Finally, he faced her fully. In the pale light of what might have been dawn, he looked even more otherworldly, skin like marble, features too perfect for comfort. It tells me when you wish privacy. I may be a monster, but I'm not without manners. Tegwin forced herself to breathe slowly. What time is it? 4 in the afternoon. He moved from the window with that unnatural grace. You slept through the day. I thought it best not to wake you. 4? She pushed the blankets aside, suddenly aware of her disheveled state, dress wrinkled, hair loose, the dried blood still staining her sleeve despite the fresh bandage. I never sleep so late. Your body was exhausted, so was your spirit. And Urine gestured to the tray. Eat. Then we'll talk about your situation, my situation. She laughed, a brittle sound. You mean my captivity? I prefer sanctuary. He settled into a chair near the vanity, movements deliberate and human slow, as if he was trying not to frighten her further. But call it what you like. The truth remains you're here for 7 nights. 6 now. We should make the time productive. Tegwin reached for the tea. It was perfect, hot, slightly sweet, with a hint of honey. She hated that she was grateful. Productive how? She asked between sips. Tell me about the man who hunts you. Her cup rattled against the saucer. Why? Because I'm curious whether he'll come looking for you here. And Urine's dark eyes never left her face. And because I need to know if I'll have to kill him. The casual way he said it, kill him, made her stomach turn. You promised I'd be safe from mortal hands. That was the bargain. And I keep my bargains. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, utterly focused. But information helps me determine how much effort will be required. So tell me, Tegwin Bryn, who is Gareth, and why does he want you dead? The sound of her full name in his voice made her shiver. She set the cup down carefully, buying time. My stepbrother, she said finally. My father remarried when I was 15. His wife brought Gareth with her, older than me by 5 years, charming to my father's face, cruel when no one watched. She touched her bandaged arm unconsciously. My father died 3 months ago. His will left everything to me, the house, the land, the investments. Gareth contested it. When that failed, he decided to remove the obstacle. Urine finished, voice neutral. A common story. Boring, even. Boring? Anger flared hot in her chest. He killed my sister. She was 12. She saw him forge the new documents, changing the will, and she threatened to tell. He made it look like fever, but I knew, and I couldn't prove it. And then he came for me. Her voice broke. She pressed her hand over her mouth, forcing back the grief that threatened to drown her. When she looked up, Urine's expression had changed. Not softer, exactly, but more present, as if he'd been far away and suddenly returned. 12, he repeated quietly. A child. Yes. What was her name? The question surprised her. Sioned. She loved birds. She wanted to be a naturalist when she grew up. Tegwin's throat ached. She never will. Silence filled the room like water. Outside, wind rattled the windows. The white rose on the tray seemed to glow in the gray light. I had a sister once, Urine said finally. His voice had changed, distant, hollow. A very long time ago. I couldn't save her either. Tegwin stared at him. What happened? She married a vampire. His smile was terrible. The oldest story in our world. She thought he'd change for her, become human again. Instead, he turned her without permission, and she went mad from it. Killed 12 people before I found her. He paused. I was the one who drove the stake through her heart. The weight of that confession settled heavy in Tegwin's chest. How long ago? 300 years, give or take a decade. He stood abruptly, turning back to the window. Time becomes difficult to measure when you have too much of it. Do you regret it? The question escaped before she could stop it. Becoming what you are, every night. The admission was so quiet she almost missed it. And never. The contradiction is the curse, Miss Bryn. To hate what you've become, while being unable to imagine any other existence. Tegwin rose from the bed, legs unsteady. She moved to stand beside him at the window, keeping distance between them but sharing the view. Wild gardens, broken statuary, mist rolling through skeletal trees. The rose, she said, in the vase. Where did it come from? Nothing's blooming outside. The greenhouse. Urine didn't look at her. In the west wing. Its enchanted holds summer trapped inside while winter devours everything else. The only living things in this estate besides you are in that glass prison. Sounds lonely. Everything here is lonely, Miss Bryn. Even the stones. They stood together in silence, watching the mist turn the garden into a ghost of itself. Tegwin's reflection showed faintly in the glass, pale and tired and still alive. His showed nothing at all. 6 more nights, she said softly. Yes. Will you teach me? She turned to face him, heart pounding at her own boldness. If I'm trapped here, I want to understand your world, what you are, what the rules are. Aneurin's head turned slowly. His eyes caught hers, and she saw something flicker in those dark depths. Surprise, maybe, or hunger, or something more dangerous still. Why? He asked. Because ignorance is its own prison. Tegwin lifted her chin. And I've spent too long in cages already. For a long moment, he simply stared at her. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled a real smile, small but genuine. Very well, he said. Your education begins tonight. First lesson, never trust a vampire who offers you safety. We always want something in return. What do you want from me? His smile faded. I don't know yet. That's what frightens me. He left without another word, the door opening and closing by itself. Tegwin stood alone in the blue room, watching his absence like a wound. Outside, the mist grew thicker, and the day bled slowly into night. Chapter 4. Blood and Silver. The library was a cathedral of forgotten knowledge. Tegwin stood in the doorway, breathless. Shelves stretched 3 stories high, connected by iron staircases that spiraled like frozen whirlpools. Books filled every surface, leather-bound volumes cracked with age, manuscripts tied with ribbon, scrolls yellowed to the color of bone. Candles burned in brass holders, casting pools of amber light that turned the space into something between sanctuary and crypt. Impressed? Aneurin's voice came from somewhere above. She craned her neck and found him perched on a 3rd-story railing, one leg dangling over the drop with careless confidence. No human could sit so casually, so high, with such complete disregard for gravity. Terrified, she admitted. Good. He dropped, simply stepped off the railing and fell, coat billowing. Tegwin gasped, reaching out instinctively, but he landed soundlessly on the floor beside her, straightening as if he'd merely stepped down from a curb. Fear keeps you sharp. Complacency kills. Her heart hammered. Was that necessary? Yes. He moved past her toward a reading table where books lay spread like surgical instruments. You asked to understand my world. Lesson 1. We don't obey the laws you take for granted. Physics, time, morality, all negotiable. Tegwin forced her legs to move, joining him at the table. The books were older than anything she'd seen, pages covered in languages she couldn't read, illustrations of creatures that couldn't exist. One showed a figure drinking from a woman's throat while she gazed up in ecstasy. Another depicted a battle between armored knights and winged shadows. These are histories? She asked. Propaganda, mostly. Aneurin traced a finger over a page without touching it, as if the paper might burn him. Written by vampires who wanted their bloodlines remembered as noble houses rather than plague vectors. But there's truth buried in the fiction, like all the best lies. He pulled a chair out for her, surprisingly gentlemanly, then sat across the way. Table. Hands folded. What do you know about vampires, Miss Bryn? Before you met me, Tegwin considered. Folktales. Stories to frighten children. Creatures that drink blood. Burn in sunlight, sleep in coffins filled with earth from their homeland, vulnerable to crosses, garlic, silver. Silver, yes. He reached into his coat and produced a ring tarnished. And simple, clearly ancient. The rest is superstition or exaggeration. But silver? He placed the ring in his palm. Where it touched his skin, smoke rose. The scent of burning meat filled the air. Tegwin recoiled. Stop. But he kept his hand open, watching the metal sear his flesh with clinical detachment. Only when the burn went deep enough to expose bone did he finally remove the ring, setting it on the table between them. His palm was ruined, blackened and weeping. Yet as Tegwin watched, horrified, the wound began to close, skin knitting itself together, bone rebuilding, until within 30 seconds his hand was perfect. Again. Silver is memory, Aneurin said quietly, flexing his restored fingers. Every vampire is made through violence. We're born of murder, transformation, loss. Silver remembers that original wound. It reminds us of our humanity by burning it away. Tegwin's throat felt tight. Does it hurt? Extraordinarily. He met her eyes. But pain is useful. It keeps me honest. About what? About what I am. He leaned back. I can heal almost anything, move faster than your eye can track, hear your heartbeat from rooms away, and convince most mortals to do my bidding with nothing but my voice. I could snap your neck before you finished screaming. His expression was flat, pitiless. Silver reminds me that I'm not a god, just a monster with delusions of dignity. Tegwin forced herself not to look away. And sunlight? Painful, yes. Fatal? Eventually, with enough exposure. But it's more. He paused, searching for words. Diminishing. Sunlight strips away the magic that holds us. Together. Makes us sluggish. Weak. Human. Almost. Disgust colored his tone. Most vampires avoid it out of pride rather than fear. Do you? I haven't seen the sun in 200 years. Something flickered across his face, longing. Maybe. Or its corpse. I remember it, though. The warmth. The way it made colors sharp and real. I dream of it sometimes, and I wake furious that dreams are all I have left. The raw honesty in his voice caught her off guard. She'd expected coldness, distance. Not this aching vulnerability, wrapped in self-loathing. What about feeding? She asked carefully. Blood. Ah. Anurin's mouth curved, but it wasn't quite a smile. The part everyone wants to know but is too polite to ask directly. Well done. He stood, moving to one of the library shelves. Yes, I drink blood. Need it, actually, to maintain this form. Without it, I'd deteriorate, become something more corpse than creature. How often? Every few days. Ideally. I can stretch it to a week if necessary. But the hunger becomes... He trailed off, pulling a book from the shelf with more force than required. Problematic. And your victims? Tegwin's voice shook slightly. Do you kill them? He turned, book forgotten in his hands. That depends on how much control I have. If I'm careful, if I take only what I need, they survive. Weak, dizzy, sometimes with memory gaps, but alive. His eyes darkened. If I'm not careful, or if the hunger is too strong, or if they're particularly fragile. He shrugged. Then I paint their portrait. The casual way he said it made ice crawl down her spine. Is that why I'm here? The question burst out before she could stop it. To be your food? Anurin went very still. When he spoke, his voice was soft and dangerous. If I wanted you as food, Miss Bryn, you'd already be dead. I don't play with my meals. He set the book down deliberately. You're here because I was curious. Because you stumbled into my world by accident. And I wanted to see what kind of person runs toward a vampire when death chases them. And what kind am I? The interesting kind. He moved closer. Not threatening, but not quite safe either. The kind who asks questions when they should be begging. The kind who looks at a monster and tries to understand it rather than destroy it. He stopped just beyond arm's reach. It's been a very long time since anyone looked at me with curiosity instead of terror. I'm terrified, Tegwin admitted. I know. I can hear it in your pulse. His head tilted. But you're also curious. The two aren't mutually exclusive. Before she could respond, a sound cut through the library, sharp and violent. Glass shattering. Somewhere in the house, far away but unmistakable. Anurin's entire demeanor changed in an instant. The scholar vanished, replaced by the predator. His eyes went black, fully black, no white remaining. His lips pulled back from teeth that were suddenly too sharp. Too many. Stay here, he commanded, voice layered with something that made her bones ache to obey. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone. What's happening? What's happening? But he was already gone, moved so fast he seemed to simply stop existing in one place and begin existing in another. Tegwin stood alone in the library, surrounded by dead knowledge and living candles. The air smelled like old paper and the lingering char of burned flesh. Outside the library, footsteps approached. Not Anurin's silent glide. These were heavy, deliberate, wrong. She grabbed the silver ring from the table, clutching it despite the way it seemed to pulse with cold. The footsteps stopped outside the door. Someone knocked 3 measured strikes. Little bird, a voice called, male and unfamiliar. I know you're in there, and I know you're alone. Your monster is busy. Why don't you open the door and we can talk about your situation? Tegwin pressed her back against the bookshelf, mind racing. This wasn't Gareth's voice, but the speaker knew about her. Knew she was here. Another knock, harder. I'm not patient, little bird. Open up, or I'll do it myself. She looked around desperately. No other exits. Windows too high to reach. The library was a trap. Last chance, the voice said, almost cheerful now. Though honestly, I hope you make me work for it. It's been such a dull century. The door exploded inward, ripped from its hinges by invisible force. In the doorway stood a figure in gentleman's clothing, handsome in the way expensive poisons were beautiful. His smile was all teeth and promises. There you are, he said, stepping over the ruined door. Now then, let's discuss your worth. Chapter 5. The Hunter's Bargain. Tegwin's fingers tightened around the silver ring until its edges bit into her palm. The intruder moved like water poured through air, not fast exactly, but liquid, inevitable. His eyes were lighter than Anarin's, almost gray, and they caught the candlelight with a shine that was distinctly wrong. Not reflecting, generating. Put down the silver, little bird. His voice was warm honey over broken glass. It won't help you, and it's rude to threaten a guest. You destroyed the door, Tegwin managed, backing against the bookshelf. Guests don't usually. I'm not a usual anything. He stopped at the reading table, picking up one of the books with casual interest. His fingers left frost patterns on the leather cover. Murig, House of Winter's Breath. And you're the mortal my cousin has locked away in his decaying palace. The talk of the territory, actually. Anurin of the Shadows, taking a pet? Unprecedented. I'm not a pet, Tegwin said through gritted teeth. No? Murig set the book down carefully, each movement precise and terrible. Then what are you? Guest implies you can leave. Prisoner would be more honest, wouldn't it? Though Anurin always did prefer polite fictions to brutal truth. Somewhere in the house, something crashed. A roar that wasn't quite human shook the walls. Murig smiled. There he is. Probably just discovered I've breached his defenses. He'll be furious, he's always been territorial about his possessions. Those gray eyes fixed on her. Which gives us perhaps 3 minutes. So let's be efficient. I'm here to make you an offer. You haven't heard it yet. He glided closer, and the temperature dropped with each step. Your stepbrother, Gareth. Persistent fellow. Hired a rather expensive tracker to find you witch-blooded, good nose for the lost. She traced you to the border town, to the platform, but then the trail went cold. Interesting. That, as if you'd simply vanished. Tegwin's heart hammered. How do you know this? Because I've been following him. Following you, really, since you fled. Call it professional interest. Murig stopped just outside striking distance. Gareth believes you're dead. The tracker told him you likely fell prey to something inhuman. He's satisfied enough to return home and claim his inheritance. He paused. Unless someone tells him otherwise. Are you threatening me? I'm offering you information. His smile widened. I know where he is. I know how to reach him. And I know that you want him to suffer for what he did to your sister. Don't you, little bird? In your secret heart, where the rage lives, you want him screaming. She did. Gods help her, she did. The admission tasted like poison and truth. What do you want? Tegwin forced out. Simple. Murig spread his hands. The picture of reasonableness. Leave this house. Come with me. 7 nights in my estate instead of Anurin's. At the end, I'll deliver your stepbrother to you bound, helpless, yours to judge. You can have your justice. All I ask is a week of your time. Why? The question was automatic now, the only defense she had. Because it will wound my cousin. Murig's pleasantness fell away, revealing something colder beneath. We have history, he and I. Bad blood, you might say. Though all our blood is bad. He took something from me once. I'd like to return the favor. Footsteps thundered closer, Anurin, moving fast but not fast enough. Decide quickly, Murig said, extending his hand. Frost formed on his fingertips. Justice and freedom, or captivity with a monster who's already lying to you. He hasn't told you everything, has he? About why this house is dying, about whose room you're sleeping in, about what happened to the last mortal who made a bargain with the Count of Shadows. Tegwin's mouth went dry. What are you talking about? Ask him about Olwen, Murig whispered. Ask him why he keeps her room exactly as she left it. Ask him what choice she made, and where she is now. The library door, what remained of it, exploded outward. Anurin stood in the wreckage, and he was terrible. His true form, perhaps, or closer to it. Eyes completely black, hands ending in talons, something dark and vast unfurling behind him like wings made of solidified shadow. Get away from her. His voice wasn't his voice. It was layered, ancient, the sound of earth swallowing graves. Murig raised his hands in mock surrender. Cousin, how dramatic. I was just making introductions. You breached my territory. Anurin's form shifted, solidifying back toward human but not quite reaching it. That means death. Ours or yours. Does it? Murig glanced at Tegwin. Interesting. He's protecting you as if you're already his. Tell me, little bird, have you drunk from him yet? Has he tasted you? Blood bonds are so intimate, aren't they? Enough. Anurin moved, and the world blurred. One moment Murig stood near Tegwin. The next, Anurin had him by the throat, lifted against the bookshelf with enough force to crack the wood. Books tumbled down around them, pages fluttering like dying birds. She is under my protection, Anurin snarled, face inches from Murig's. My territory, my oath. Touch her and I will scatter your ashes across 7 countries. Murig laughed, despite the hand crushing his windpipe. So it's like that, is it? How sweet. How doomed. He looked past Anurin to Tegwin, expression pitying. He'll ruin you, little bird. It's what shadows do, they consume everything they touch. Ask Olwen. Oh wait, you can't. Anurin slammed him harder against the shelf. More books fell. The impact should have shattered bone, but Murig only smiled. Go, Anurin said without looking at Tegwin. Your room. Now. Lock the door and don't open it until morning. But, now. The command in his voice was irresistible. Tegwin found her legs moving, carrying her toward the exit. She paused at the ruined doorway, looking back. The 2 vampires were frozen in tableau. Anurin's hand still wrapped around Murig's throat. Murig's gray eyes fixed on her with something that might have been amusement, or might have been hunger. Think about my offer, Murig called to her. Justice, freedom, truth. I'll wait 3 days. After that, the stepbrother gets bored and leaves the country, and you lose your chance. Tegwin ran. Through corridors that seemed longer than before, past portraits whose eyes followed her progress, upstairs that multiplied in the dark. Behind her, she heard crashing, roaring, the wet sound of flesh tearing. She made it to the blue room and locked the door, then shoved a chair against it for good measure. Her hands shook as she backed toward the bed, the silver ring still clenched in her fist. Outside, the storm had arrived. Rain hammered the windows with malicious intent. Lightning turned the room white, then black, then white again. And in those flashes of illumination, Tegwin saw something she'd missed before. On the wall beside the vanity, barely visible, were words carved into the damask wallpaper. Small, desperate, written by someone with shaking hands and failing hope. She moved closer, tracing the letters with her fingers. He says he loves me. He says I can choose. But I'm so cold. I'm so cold and I can't remember warmth. O. B. June 12th. O. B. Olwen Bryn. Tegwin's knees buckled. She collapsed beside the bed, mind reeling. The same last name. The same room. The copper hair in the brush. This had been her ancestor's room. And whatever had happened to Olwen, it hadn't ended well. Thunder cracked directly overhead, and in its aftermath, Tegwin heard weeping, faint, far away. A woman's voice, crying behind walls that refused to answer. She curled into a ball on the floor, silver ring pressed against her heart, and waited for morning that might never come. Chapter 6. The Confession. Dawn never arrived. Tegwin woke on the floor, body aching, the storm still raging beyond the windows. The room felt smaller somehow, the blue walls pressing in. She dreamed of copper hair and empty graves, of a woman who looked like her begging at a locked door. The carved message mocked her from the wall. I'm so cold. Someone knocked 3 soft taps, polite despite the chaos, of the night before. Miss Bryn. Anurin's voice, human sounding again. Tired. May I enter? She almost laughed at the formality. Your cousin said you don't need permission, that you can go anywhere in your domain. Silence. Then, my cousin says many things, most of them designed to cause maximum damage. May I enter, or shall we have this conversation through the door? Tegwin pulled herself upright, bones protesting. She looked like something drowned, dress wrinkled beyond repair, hair tangled, the bandage on her arm spotted with blood where she'd slept on it wrong. Fine, she said. Come in. The door opened smoothly, chair and all, as if the furniture had simply decided to move. Anurin stood in the hallway looking remarkably composed for someone who'd been tearing another vampire apart hours ago. His coat was immaculate, hair tied back, face calm. Only his eyes betrayed him, shadows underneath, a tightness at the corners. "You're hurt," he said, gaze dropping to her arm. "Old wound." She straightened, trying for dignity despite everything. "You're not. How is that possible? I heard vampires heal." He moved into the room slowly, hands visible, making himself smaller. "Murig escaped, unfortunately. He's older than me, stronger in some ways. But he won't return. I made the cost of trespass very clear." "He knew my name," Tegwin said. "My situation." "How?" "Because he's been watching you for some time." Anurin's jaw tightened. "Possibly since you fled your home. He has an interest in me, an old grudge, and you became leverage the moment you entered my carriage. So I'm bait." "No," he met her eyes. "You're a complication. There's a difference." Tegwin moved to the vanity, needing distance. Her fingers found the silver brush, tracing the copper strands still tangled in its bristles. "Who was Olwen?" she asked quietly. Anurin went very still. "Where did you hear that name?" "Your cousin mentioned her. And I found..." She gestured to the wall, to the carved message. "This is her room, isn't it?" "Olwen Bryn. Same last name as mine." "Yes." The admission was barely audible. "What happened to her?" For a long moment, Anurin said nothing. He stood frozen in the center of the room, looking at everything except Tegwin. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow. "She was my wife." The words hit like stones. Tegwin turned, brush forgotten. "You're 200 years ago." He moved to the window, needing his own distance. "She came here just as you did, fleeing something, seeking shelter. I offered her sanctuary." She stayed. His reflection was absent in the glass, making it seem like he was talking to no one. "We fell in love, or what passes for love when one party is already dead. She wanted to stay longer than the agreed time. I warned her, told her what I was, what it meant. She said she understood. And..." Tegwin's throat felt tight. "She chose wrong." Anurin's hands curled into fists. "After 2 years, she asked me to turn her, to make her like me so we could have eternity. I refused. Again and again, I refused. I'd seen what immortality did to people, the madness, the hunger, the slow erosion of everything human." His voice broke, but she was persistent. "She said she'd rather die as a vampire than grow old without me." Tegwin waited, hardly breathing. "So I did it." The confession came out ragged. "I turned her, and for 3 perfect months, we were happy. She was strong, graceful, everything I'd hoped. Then winter came, and she started to fade." He pressed his hand against the glass. "Not die, vampires don't die from seasons. But she grew colder, weaker. She stopped feeding, started forgetting things, her mother's name, her favorite color, why she'd wanted immortality in the first place. What was wrong with her? The transformation was incomplete." Anurin's voice was flat now, emotionless, a recitation of facts too painful to feel. Something in her blood resisted the change. She was caught, between human and vampire, belonging to neither, trapped in a state of endless dying. He paused. "She begged me to end it, to give her true death. So I did. I drove a stake through her heart and burned her body at sunrise. And I've lived in this rotting house ever since, wondering if I killed her or saved her." Tegwin's legs felt weak. She sank onto the edge of the bed. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it's not exactly an inviting story." Anurin finally turned from the window. His face was carefully blank. "Welcome to my home, where I murdered my wife. Please, make yourself comfortable. You didn't murder her. I killed her." He cut across her words. "Twice. Once by turning her against my better judgment, and once by ending the suffering I caused. The method doesn't matter. The result is the same. And this room?" Tegwin looked around at the preserved space. "You kept it exactly as she left it." "Yes." He moved to the door. "I'm not sure if it's penance or sentimentality. Perhaps both. But I couldn't change anything. Couldn't let her go." His dark eyes found hers. "Which is why you need to leave, Miss Bryn. Tomorrow, I'll break the bargain, give you resources to disappear, ensure your stepbrother never finds you. But you can't stay here." "Why?" The question came out sharper than she intended. Because history repeats, Anurin said softly, and I'm not strong enough to survive it again. You remind me of her, the questions, the curiosity, the way you look at me like I'm a puzzle to solve rather than a threat to fear. If you stay, I'll become attached. And when I become attached, I make terrible decisions. He paused in the doorway. I won't make the same mistake twice. Not with you. What if I want to stay? The words escaped before Tegwin could stop them. Anurin's expression cracked just for a moment. She saw raw longing break through. Then it was gone, replaced by careful neutrality. You don't know what you're asking, he said. Then explain it to me. Tegwin stood, moving closer. You promised to teach me. To show me your world. 3 days left of our bargain, let me decide for myself whether I want to leave. And if you choose wrong? If you end up like Olwyn, caught between death and life, begging me to end you, then that's my choice. She lifted her chin. You said it yourself, you're not a thief. You take nothing without permission. So give me the choice, Count. Respect me enough to let me decide my own fate. They stood facing each other across the blue room, the ghost of Olwyn hanging between them like smoke. Finally, Anurin nodded. 3 more days. Then you leave, whether you want to or not. That's my condition. Agreed. And no more questions about Olwyn. That past is dead. Let it stay buried. Agreed. He left without another word, and the door closed so gently it didn't make a sound. Tegwin sat back on the bed, mind racing. 3 days to understand what Anurin wasn't saying. 3 days to decide if she was brave enough to choose a monster's love, or wise enough to run while she still could. Outside, the storm finally broke. Sunlight, pale and weak, filtered through the clouds, and in the corner of the room, so faint she almost missed it, Tegwin heard that weeping again. A woman's voice, crying behind walls that would never let her go. Chapter 7. The Blood Moon. The greenhouse appeared at midnight. Tegwin had been wandering the estate, restless after another day spent in careful conversation with Anurin, discussions of history and poetry, and anything except the question humming between them. She'd turned a corner in the west wing and found a door she could have sworn hadn't existed before. Glass panels fogged with condensation, warm light bleeding through the cracks. She pushed it open and stepped into summer. The air hit her like a wall, humid, thick, alive with the scent of jasmine and rich earth. The greenhouse stretched impossibly large, bigger than the green wing that contained it. Glass ceiling showing stars that were too bright, too close. Plants grew wild here, vines tangled with roses, fruit trees heavy with blossoms and ripe fruit simultaneously, flowers in colors that didn't exist in nature. And in the center, beside a fountain of black marble, Anurin stood with his back to her. He'd removed his coat. His white shirt was open at the collar, sleeves rolled up, revealing arms marked with scars that glowed faintly silver in the starlight. He was feeding wrist pressed to his mouth, drinking his own blood. Tegwin froze in the doorway. He lowered his arm slowly, the wound already closing. When he turned, his eyes were completely black, pupils blown wide, lips stained red. He looked like something from a nightmare or a dream, beautiful and terrible and utterly inhuman. You shouldn't be here, he said. His voice was rough, layered. The door opened for me, Tegwin replied, forcing herself not to run. I thought that meant you wanted me to come. The house has its own opinions. Anurin wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. But the evidence remained, the flush in his cheeks that only blood could bring, the predatory grace in how he moved. It likes you. Dangerous thing, to be liked by haunted places. Why are you drinking your own blood? The question tumbled out. He smiled, but it wasn't pleasant. Because I'm hungry, and you're standing in my greenhouse smelling like life and copper, and I don't trust myself near easier prey. He moved to the fountain, washing his hands in water that ran dark. I haven't fed from a living source in 3 days. Your presence makes that difficult. I could leave. Don't. The command stopped her mid-turn. Stay. Please. Just. He exhaled slowly. Stay over there. Out of reach. Tegwin remained by the door, heart pounding. The air between them felt charged, dangerous. She could see his control in every rigid line of his body, every careful breath. Tell me about the blood bond, she said, remembering Murig's words. What your cousin mentioned? What does it mean? Anurin was quiet for a long moment. It means exactly what it sounds like. When a vampire feeds from someone regularly, a connection forms. emotional, physical. The mortal can feel the vampire's presence, sometimes their moods. The vampire becomes possessive, protective. It's the first step toward turning someone. Is that what you want? To turn me? No. The denial was immediate, fierce. Never. I told you what happened to Olwen. I won't risk that again. But you want to feed from me. It wasn't a question. His jaw tightened. Want is a complicated word. Yes, I want to. The same way fire wants oxygen. It's hunger, not desire. There's a difference. Is there? Tegwin moved closer, just one step. She saw him tense. You've been starving yourself for days. Because of me. Why? Because I made a promise. His black eyes tracked her movement. To keep you safe from mortal hands. That includes mine, especially mine. What if I gave permission? The words hung in the humid air like smoke. In urine went absolutely still, not human stillness, but the frozen immobility of a predator deciding whether to strike. You don't know what you're offering, he said, voice barely above a whisper. Then show me. Tegwin took another step. She was trembling but refused to stop. You said you're not a thief, that you take nothing without consent. So I'm giving it. Feed from me. Once. Let me understand what this is. Tegwin, I'm not Olwen. The name felt heavy on her tongue. I'm not asking for eternity, just truth. Show me what you are, completely. No more restraint, no more lies of omission. And Urin's hands curled into fists. If I start, I might not stop. You will. She moved closer still, now only an arm's length away. Because you're stronger than your hunger. You've proven that every day I've been here. You have too much faith in me. But he didn't back away. Maybe. Tegwin extended her wrist, pulse point up. Or maybe you need someone to have faith in you. When was the last time anyone trusted you, Count? Something in her words broke him. He closed the distance in a movement too fast to see, his hand wrapping around her wrist with surprising gentleness. His thumb found her pulse, and his eyes drifted closed. Your heartbeat, he murmured. I can hear it always. When you're afraid, when you're curious, when you dream, it slows, and I lie awake listening to it like music. He opened his eyes, still black, still hungry. If I do this, something will change between us. I need you to understand that. I understand, Tegwin whispered, though her whole body shook. No, Anurin said softly. You don't. But you will. He pulled her wrist to his mouth and bit down. The pain was sharp and immediate, a spike of ice through her veins. Then it transformed into something else entirely. Warmth. Spreading from the bite like wine through water, turning everything liquid and golden. She felt his mouth on her skin, felt the pull of him drinking, and instead of horror she felt intimate, known, seen in a way she'd never experienced. Her knees weakened. He caught her with his free arm, pulling her against his chest. She could feel his heart, a slow, cold beat, nothing, like her own racing pulse. Could feel his hunger, a vast, aching thing that had nothing to do with blood and everything to do with loneliness stretching across centuries. I've been alone so long, his thoughts whispered into hers through the blood connection. So long, and you taste like home. She wanted to answer, but the words wouldn't come. The world had narrowed to his mouth on her wrist, his arm around her waist, the greenhouse spinning around them like a carousel made of summer and stars. Then, abruptly, he released her, pulled away so fast she stumbled. His hand pressed over the bite, and when he removed it, the wound was sealed, 2 small scars the color of moonlight, but no longer bleeding. They stood staring at each other, both breathing hard despite only one of them needing air. That was, Tegwin started. A mistake. Anurin finished, backing away. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have, you didn't know. Stop. She touched her wrist, feeling the new scars. They pulsed with warmth. Don't apologize for giving me what I asked for. You asked to understand. His voice was ragged, not to be bound. Bound? He gestured helplessly between them. The blood bond, it started. You'll feel me now, my presence, my moods. In your dreams, you might see my memories. And he closed his eyes. I'll know if you're hurt. I'll feel your fear like it's my own. Distance won't matter. You've become mine in a way I can't undo. Tegwin absorbed this. And if I don't mind, you will. He turned away. When the 3 days end and you leave, you'll feel it, the separation. Like losing a limb, It fades eventually, but it never goes away completely. I've condemned you to feel my absence for the rest of your life. Then give me a choice. Tegwin moved to stand in front of him, forcing him to look at her. The same choice you gave Olwen. Let me decide if I want to stay. I can't. Pain cracked through his voice. I already know how that story ends. Do you? She reached up, touching his cheek. He flinched but didn't pull away. Or are you just afraid to find out if it could end differently? Before he could answer, the greenhouse door slammed open. Cold wind rushed in, killing plants where it touched. The temperature plummeted so fast that frost formed on the glass ceiling in crystalline patterns. Murig stood in the doorway, and he was smiling. How touching, he said, voice carrying across the suddenly silent space. A love story in a glass cage. But I'm afraid playtime is over. His gray eyes found Tegwin. Your 3 days are up, little bird. I found your stepbrother. He's in my parlor right now, bound with silver chains, waiting for your judgment. He tilted his head. Question is, will you claim your justice? Or will you stay here playing pretend with a monster who's too broken to love you properly? Tegwin felt Anurin tense beside her, felt his rage through the new blood bond like heat against her skin. Don't answer him, Anurin said quietly. Whatever he's offering is a trap. Is it? Murig laughed. I'm simply keeping my promise. The stepbrother for a week of her time. Very fair. Very honest. Unlike some vampires I know. She stays here, Anurin growled. Does she? Let's ask her. Murig's gaze locked on Tegwin. What do you choose, little bird? Justice and closure? Or an impossible love with a vampire who killed his last wife and will inevitably kill you too? Tegwin looked between them, Murig with his cruel smile, Anurin with his desperate eyes, and she made her choice. Chapter 8. The Price of Vengeance. I'll come with you, Tegwin said. Anurin's grip on her wrist tightened, convulsively. No. To see my stepbrother, she continued, pulling free. To face him. But not for a week. 1 hour. That's my condition. Murig's smile faltered slightly. That wasn't our agreement. Our agreement was void the moment you set foot in this territory uninvited. Tegwin forced steel into her voice, channeling every moment of rage, every sleepless night mourning her sister. 1 hour with Gareth, supervised by both of you. Then I return here and finish my bargain with Count Anurin. She looked at the shadow vampire. Is that acceptable? Anurin's jaw worked. You don't need to face him. I can make him disappear. No blood on your hands. But it wouldn't be my choice, Tegwin said softly. You keep trying to protect me from consequences. Let me have this one. Let me see him. Then I'll decide what justice looks like. The two vampires stared at each other over her head, some wordless communication passing between them. Finally, Anurin nodded once, sharply. 1 hour. I'll be present the entire time. If Murig tries anything, he won't, Murig interrupted smoothly. I'm a businessman, cousin. I keep my bargains, even the modified ones. He gestured toward the door. Shall we? Your stepbrother is getting cold. The journey to Murig's estate was a blur. Tegwin sat in his carriage, frost patterns on the windows, the scent of winter perpetually clinging to the upholstery with Anurin beside her, silent and radiating tension. She could feel him through the blood bond now, a constant presence at the edge of her awareness. His worry, his hunger, his bone-deep terror that she would choose vengeance and never return. Murig's manor appeared like ice-made architecture, all white, stone and silver filigree, windows that reflected nothing, towers that seemed carved from single pieces of crystal. Beautiful in the way glaciers were beautiful, deadly in the way frost was deadly. Inside, everything was cold. Literally, breath misted in the air, frost covered the floors. Tegwin's teeth chattered despite the heavy coat Anurin had insisted she wear. Through here, Murig said, leading them down a corridor lined with frozen sculptures. Tegwin realized with horror that they weren't sculptures at all, they were people, caught mid-motion, encased in ice that preserved every detail of their final expressions. Terror, agony, surprise, impressive collection, Anurin said flatly. Still murdering artists, I see. They weren't artists, they were dinner. Murig pushed open an ornate door. But they posed so beautifully at the end, it seemed a waste not to preserve them. The room beyond was a parlor decorated in whites and silvers, and in the center, chained to a chair with silver manacles, sat Gareth. He looked terrible, gaunt, bruised. When he saw Tegwin, His eyes widened with recognition and fear. "You," he rasped. "You're supposed to be dead. Disappointing. I know." Tegwin moved closer, Enurin shadowing her every step. "But I'm remarkably difficult to kill. Unlike Sioned," Gareth's face twisted. She would have ruined everything. "You understand? She was 12. Tegwin's voice shook. "A child, and you poisoned her because she stood between you and money. It was an inheritance. My mother married your father for that fortune. It was ours by right. It was murder." Tegwin stopped just beyond his reach. "And now you're here, helpless, the way Sioned was helpless." Gareth thrashed against the chains. The silver burned where it touched, leaving marks. "What are you going to do? Kill me? You don't have the spine. You're weak. You've always been weak." And Enurin moved so fast he blurred. One moment he stood behind Tegwin. The next, his hand was wrapped around Gareth's throat, lifting him and the chair both off the ground. "Speak to her that way again," Enurin said, voice terribly calm. "And I'll tear out your tongue and make you eat it." Slowly. "Put him down," Tegwin said quietly. Enurin hesitated, then lowered Gareth back to the floor. But he remained close, predatory tension evident in every line of his body. Tegwin studied her stepbrother, this man who had killed her sister, tried to kill her, stolen everything she'd loved. She'd imagined this moment countless times, what she'd say, what she'd do. Vengeance had kept her warm through the coldest nights of grief. But now, looking at him, she felt empty. "I could kill you," she said. "I have 2 vampires here who would do it for me if I asked. Make it quick or slow, painful or merciful. Your life is in my hands." Gareth said nothing, terror stark in his eyes. "But that won't bring Sioned back," Tegwin continued. "Nothing will, and becoming a murderer to avenge murder just makes me like you." She took a breath. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to return home. You're going to publicly confess to forging my father's will. You're going to surrender the inheritance and donate it all to the orphanage in our town, every penny. And you're going to turn yourself over to the magistrate. And if I refuse?" Gareth's voice was hoarse. Tegwin gestured to Enurin. "Then Count Enurin here will ensure you never refuse anything again. He'll make you want to confess, need to confess. He'll reach into your mind and twist until you beg for the mercy of truth." She leaned closer. "Your choice. Justice or compulsion. Either way, Sioned gets vindication." Gareth stared at her, then at the vampires flanking her. "You've changed." "I died," Tegwin said simply, "and then I decided to live. You should try it sometime." She turned away, done with him, done with the hatred that had kept her warm. It felt good, letting it go, like setting down stones she'd been carrying for miles. Mirig clapped slowly. Impressive. Merciful. Boring but impressive. He moved to unchain Gareth. "I'll have him delivered to your town with a compulsion to confess. Should make for excellent gossip." "Mirig," Enurin said, warningly. "What?" "I'm helping." The winter vampire smiled. "Besides, our little bird passed her test. She chose justice over vengeance, closure over obsession. Very mature, very human." His gray eyes found Tegwin. "Which makes her entirely unsuitable for our world, doesn't it? Too much light. It would poison her eventually." "That's for her to decide," Enurin said. "Is it?" Mirig tilted his head. "Tell me, little bird. Now that you've faced your demon and won, what keeps you in that decaying estate? Obligation? Curiosity? Or is it love?" He paused. "And if it's love, do you really think it's enough? Love didn't save Olwen. Love didn't stop my cousin from killing her. Love is just another cage, painted pretty." "Enough," Enurin snarled, but Mirig pressed on. "Here's truth for you, free of charge. Enurin will never turn you. He's too afraid of repeating his mistakes. But he'll also never let you go, so you'll stay human, stay aging, stay dying, while he remains exactly as he is. You'll wither, he'll watch. Eventually, you'll beg for the transformation, and he'll refuse, and you'll hate him. Or he'll agree, and you'll become like Olwen caught between life and death, mad with the in-between." He leaned close. "There's no happy ending here, little bird. Just slow tragedy or fast horror. Choose quickly, before you waste your short mortal life on impossibility." Silence filled the frozen parlor. Tegwin could feel Enurin's anguish through the bond, could feel him agreeing with every word. Take me home, she said to Aneurin. Please. He moved immediately, hand finding hers. Come. They left Gareth and Murig in the Winter Palace. Stepping out into the night, the journey back was silent. Tegwin's mind raced, Murig's words echoing in her skull. Everything he'd said was logical, true even. There was no path forward that didn't end in loss. But as Aneurin helped her from the carriage, as they walked through the decaying halls of his estate, she felt something else through the bond. Not despair, not resignation, hope, fragile, terrified, but there. I need to tell you something, Aneurin said as they reached the blue room. About Olwen, about why she really died. Tegwin waited. It wasn't just that the transformation failed. He continued, voice rough. It was that I didn't love her enough, not truly. I loved the idea of her, the companionship, the distraction from loneliness. But I didn't know her, not the way. He stopped. I know you, Tegwin. Your courage, your mercy, your strange faith in broken things. If I lost you the way I lost her, it wouldn't just be grief. It would unmake me. Then don't lose me, Tegwin whispered. How? The question was desperate. Murig is right. There's no version of this that doesn't end in pain. Maybe not. She took his cold hand in hers. But pain isn't the same as tragedy, and risk isn't the same as ruin. She met his dark eyes. I'm not asking for eternity tonight. I'm asking for honesty. Do you want me to stay? Not as obligation, not as bargain. Do you want me? Aneurin's control shattered. He pulled her close, forehead pressed to hers, breathing her in like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. Yes, he whispered. God's help me, yes. Then I stay, Tegwin said. We figure out the rest together. And in the blue room where Olwen had once despaired, where death had once reigned, two people who shouldn't have fit together held each other and chose hope over horror. Outside, the first snow of winter began to fall. Chapter 9, The Breaking Point. 3 weeks passed like breath held underwater. Tegwin stayed, not as prisoner, not as guest, but as something unnamed and precious. She learned the estate's rhythms, how to navigate corridors that rearranged themselves when she wasn't looking, how to read Aneurin's moods in the set of his shoulders, how to exist in a house that was slowly dying while trying to learn how to live. The blood bond deepened. She could feel him now, even in sleep, could sense when he fed. Rarely, from animals in the forest, never humans, could feel his presence like a compass always pointing home. And he could feel her heartbeat, his constant metronome, her emotions bleeding into his awareness until they became indistinguishable from his own. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it was intimate in a way that made her ache. They didn't speak of the future, didn't discuss transformation or mortality, or any of Murig's poisonous truths. Instead, they existed in the present, reading together in the library, walking through dead gardens, while Aneurin told stories about centuries she'd never see, sitting by the greenhouse fountain while she sketched, and he played piano, the music reaching her through walls that shouldn't allow sound to pass. It was fragile, perfect, doomed, and then everything broke. Tegwin woke one night to screaming, not her own, Aneurin's, distant, anguished, terrible. She ran through the dark estate, nightgown tangling around her legs, following the sound and the pull of the bond that told her he was in agony. She found him in a room she'd never seen before, a chamber at the estate's heart, circular and empty except for silver chains embedded in the walls and floor. Aneurin knelt in the center, wrists and ankles bound, the metal burning into his skin. His shirt was torn, revealing his back, and what she saw there made her stomach turn. Scars, hundreds of them, layered over each other like a palimpsest of pain, each one silver and raised, permanent. They formed patterns, deliberate cuts arranged with artistic precision. Someone had tortured him, for a very long time. Get out, he rasped without looking up. Please, Tegwin, don't see me like this. But she was already moving closer. Who did this to you? I did. He laughed bitterly. Monthly ritual. Penance for what I am. The silver reminds me what I've done, who I've killed, keeps me honest. He finally raised his head, and his eyes were wild. Go, before I lose control. It's too close to feeding time, and the pain makes the hunger worse, and you smell like everything I want. Then feed from me. No, you're starving yourself again. She knelt beside him, ignoring the way the silver chains pulsed with warning. I can feel it through the bond, the emptiness. You're trying to prove something that you can resist, that you're in control but you're just hurting yourself. I hurt everyone I touch, Anurin said through clenched teeth. The scars remind me. All those lives ended, all those families destroyed. I don't deserve comfort. I don't deserve... Me? Tegwin finished. Is that what this is about? You think you don't deserve happiness, so you punish yourself until you believe it? I don't think it. I know it. He strained against the chains. Mirig was right. I'll ruin you. It's what shadows do we consume. And I'm so hungry, Tegwin. Not just for blood. For you. For your warmth, and your heartbeat, and your strange faith in me. I want to keep you forever. And that want will destroy you the way it destroyed Olwen. Stop comparing me to her. Tegwin's shout echoed off the walls. I'm not Olwen. I'm not a substitute or a second chance. I'm here, now, making my own choices. And I choose this. I choose you. You don't know what you're choosing. Then show me. She reached for the silver chains, hissing as they burned her fingers. But she didn't stop, working at the mechanisms until they clicked open. Stop hiding behind pain and guilt. Show me who you really are. Not the monster you think you deserve to be. The person you are when you stop punishing yourself. The chains fell away. Anurin remained, kneeling, breathing hard. I'll hurt you. Then hurt me. She extended her wrist, pulse point up. Feed. Stop starving. Be the thing you're afraid of, and let me decide if it's actually terrifying, or if you've just convinced yourself it is. Tegwin, do it. Something. In him snapped. He moved with that impossible speed, one hand tangling in her hair, the other catching her wrist. But instead of biting immediately, he hesitated, mouth hovering over her skin. I don't want to be gentle, he whispered. Not this time. Not with the hunger this strong. Then don't be. He bit down hard. No mercy, no restraint. The pain was sharp and immediate, and it didn't transform into pleasure the way it had before. It stayed pain brilliant and white-hot, and she gasped, tears springing to her eyes. But she didn't pull away. Through the bond, she felt everything. His hunger, vast and aching. His self-hatred, a poison he'd been drinking for centuries. His love for her, desperate and terrified and all-consuming. And beneath it all, exhaustion, bone-deep weariness of existing when every moment was a battle against his own nature. I'm so tired, his thoughts whispered into hers. Tired of fighting, tired of being alone, tired of being a monster. Then rest. She thought back. You don't have to fight alone anymore. He drank until she was dizzy, until the room spun and her knees went weak. He caught her before she fell, holding her against his chest. And finally, he pulled away. I took too much, he said, horror breaking through. Gods, Tegwin, I'm sorry. Shh. She touched his face with trembling fingers. I'm fine. See? Still breathing. Still here. But she wasn't fine. She could feel the blood loss, the weakness spreading through her limbs. The bond pulsed with alarm as Anurin felt it too. I need to feed you, he said urgently. Get your strength back. I have stores, animal blood. It's not ideal, but Anurin. She caught his hand. I'm all right. Just need to rest. You could die. Humans are fragile. And I took too much. And I won't die. She managed a weak smile. You won't let me. I can feel it through the bond you'd burn this whole estate down before you let me go. He stared at her. This impossible woman who kept choosing him despite every reason not to. Why aren't you afraid of me? I am. Her admission was quiet. Terrified, actually. But not of you hurting me. Of losing this. Whatever this is. Love, Anurin said. The word fell like a stone. This is love, and I don't know how to do it without destroying it. Then we learn together. Tegwin pulled him closer, despite her weakness, despite everything. No more chains, no more penance. Just try. With me. They stayed like that in the torture chamber, her growing weaker, him holding her like she was made of glass, until finally he lifted her and carried her back to the blue room. He laid her on the bed and brought her water, food, anything to help her recover. And when she was stable enough to sleep, he sat beside her, holding her hand, feeling her pulse through the bond like a prayer. I have to tell you something, he said into the darkness. About the transformation. About what happened to Olwen. Tegwin's eyes. fluttered open. You said we wouldn't talk about her. I lied. He looked at their joined hands. The truth is, I don't know if her transformation failed because of something in her blood, or because of something in me. Maybe I'm broken in a way that breaks anyone I try to turn. Maybe my curse is that I can love but never keep. Or maybe, Tegwin said softly, you're so convinced you'll fail that you sabotage yourself. Has that occurred to you? He was silent for a long moment. Every day. Then we have two choices. She squeezed his hand weakly. I can leave. Save us both the pain of an uncertain ending. Or I can stay, and we face the uncertainty together. But you have to choose. Ainorin, I can't want this enough for both of us. The darkness pressed in. Outside, wind rattled the windows. The estate groaned like a dying thing. Stay, Ainorin whispered. Please, for however long we have, just stay. Then, promise me something, Tegwin said. No more chains, no more punishment. If we do this, we do it honestly. No hiding behind guilt or fear. I promise. He bent and pressed his forehead to hers. And I promise that if the time comes, if you want the transformation, I'll try. Despite my fear, despite everything. I haven't decided yet, she admitted, if I want eternity. But it helps knowing it's an option. Take all the time you need, Anurin said. I have nothing but time. Tegwin fell asleep holding his hand, feeling the bond pulse between them like a second heartbeat. And in the torture chamber, the silver chains lay abandoned on the floor, cooling in the dark. Chapter 10. The Choice. Winter deepened, and with it, Tegwin's understanding. She learned the truth about vampires not from books, but from living among shadows. How Anurin could go days without sleep but would sometimes drop into death-like slumber for hours. How he could hear her heartbeat from 3 floors away but missed human idioms because language evolved faster than his learning. How he'd forgotten what food tasted like but remembered every sunset he'd seen across 400 years. She learned about the House of Shadows and Anurin's bloodline, old and complex. There were others like him scattered across the world, vampires who'd chosen isolation over the political games Murig preferred. They had rules, treaties, boundaries that protected both mortal and immortal. Breaking them meant war. And she learned that she was already becoming something more than human. It started small. Her hearing sharpened, she could detect the mice in the walls, the wind's direction from its sound. Her night vision improved until she needed no candles. The blood bond deepened until she could sometimes see through Anurin's eyes, feel his thoughts as clearly as her own. You're changing, Anurin said one night in the library. They sat by the fire, a concession to her humanity, though he felt no cold. The bond is strong enough that some of my nature is bleeding into you. Tegwin set down her book. Is that dangerous? I don't know. His honesty was stark. This has never happened before. Usually bonds this deep require regular feeding over months. We've only done it twice, but the connection is. He trailed off. It's like you're adapting. Your body is learning to accommodate my presence. Is that what happened with Olwen? He flinched at the name. No, with her. I turned her fully the traditional way, draining her to the point of death and feeding her my blood. What's happening to you is different, slower, maybe safer. He paused. Or maybe more dangerous. I don't have maps for this territory. Tegwin moved to kneel beside his chair. What if we don't try to turn me fully? What if we let the bond continue naturally, see where it leads? You could become something in between, Anurin said. Not vampire, not human. There are old stories about such things, tampirs, half-turned, walkers between worlds. They're unstable usually. Mad. Usually. She echoed. But not always. There are rumors of successful cases. Mortals who bonded so deeply with vampires that they became immortal without full transformation. But they're rare. Unverifiable. Possibly just myths we tell ourselves to justify hope. Hope isn't a bad thing, Tegwin said. Hope is the most dangerous thing, Anurin countered. It makes you take risks you shouldn't. It makes you believe in impossible futures. But his hand found her hair, threading through the dark strands. And yet, here I am, hoping. The fire crackled. Outside, snow fell in sheets, burying the dead garden under white. There's something else, Anurin said quietly. Murig sent a message. Delivered by Crow, he's dramatic that way. He's challenging my claim to you. Says I'm in violation of territory rules by keeping a mortal bound without proper transformation. He's calling a conclave, Tegwin's stomach dropped. What's a conclave? A gathering of the old houses. They'll judge whether our bond is natural or coerced. If they rule against us, he stopped. They could force the transformation, or demand I release you. Or, if they believe I've broken covenant laws, execute us both. When? 3 nights from now? At the old cathedral in the border town neutral ground. His jaw tightened. I could refuse. We could run. But that would make us fugitives, hunted by every vampire house. Not a life, just a different cage. Then we go, Tegwin said. We face them. Tell the truth. The truth is complicated. Anurin pulled her up onto his lap, kneading her closer. We've bonded without full transformation. You're changing in ways I can't predict. I love you in a way that terrifies me. And I don't know if what we're doing is breaking you or saving you. Neither do I, she admitted. But I know that I'd rather face uncertainty with you than safety alone. Even if it means risking everything? Your humanity? Your life? Especially then. She kissed him slow, deliberate. I'm not afraid of transformation. I'm afraid of regret. Of wondering what could have been if I'd been brave enough to try. And Anurin held her like she was made of smoke, like she might disappear. I don't deserve you. Probably not, Tegwin agreed. But I'm choosing you anyway. Isn't that what love is? Choosing someone despite logic, despite fear, despite everything that says it's impossible? If this is love, Anurin murmured against her hair, then I understand why mortals write so many warnings about it. It's madness. The best kind, she said. They stayed by the fire until dawn approached. Anurin left before sunrise, still weak to its pull, still vulnerable. Tegwin remained, watching the sky lighten through the window. 3 days until the conclave. 3 days to prepare for judgment. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt oddly calm. She'd made her choice. Whatever came next, they'd face together. In the blue room, she stood before the wall where Olwen's message was. Carved. I'm so cold, I can't remember warmth. She traced the letters with her finger. I'm sorry you were alone, she whispered to the ghost. But I'm not you. And he's not the same man who made those mistakes. As if in answer, a warmth spread through the room. Not heat, but presence. Gentle, approving. The ghost of the house acknowledging her. Tegwin smiled. Thank you, she said to the air, for keeping him safe until I found him. The warmth faded. The house settled. Outside, snow continued falling. But inside, something had shifted. 3 days. Then they'd find out if love could survive judgment. If transformation could be gentle. If 2 broken things could make something whole. Tegwin was ready to find out. Chapter 11. The Conclave. The cathedral was a skeleton of faith, long abandoned to weather and time. Tegwin stood in its ruined nave, snow drifting through holes in the ceiling, and watched as vampires arrived from the darkness. They came in pairs and trios, materializing from shadows like nightmares taking form. Each wore the markers of their house: silver for winter, crimson for blood, gold for solace, black for shadow. Anurin stood beside her, his hand firm in hers. He wore his house color's black coat with silver embroidery, a circlet of dark metal in his hair. Lord of Shadows, ancient and weary, holding the hand of a mortal who didn't belong. They're all older than me, he murmured. Stronger. If this goes badly, it won't, Tegwin interrupted, though fear pooled cold in her stomach. Murag arrived last, of course. He swept into the cathedral with theatrical flair, frost spreading from his footsteps. With him came 3 others, his house, all beautiful and terrible and hungry. Cousin? Murag called, voice echoing off stone. How generous of you to accept our invitation. I was concerned you'd run. I don't run from truth, Anurin replied evenly. Don't you? Murag's smile was sharp. You've been hiding in that dying estate for 2 centuries. Seems like running to me. Before Anurin could respond, another vampire stepped forward, ancient and commanding, wearing gold that caught the moonlight. This was Emrys of House Solace, eldest present, arbiter of disputes. Enough, Emrys said, his voice carrying weight that made even Murag fall silent. We're not here for petty vendettas. We're here to determine if Lord Anurin has violated covenant law by bonding a mortal without proper transformation. His golden eyes found Tegwin. Come forward, child. Tegwin squeezed Anurin's hand once, then released it. She walked alone across the ruined nave, acutely aware of dozens of vampiric eyes tracking her movement. When she reached the center, she stood as tall as her 5'0" frame allowed. "Tell us your name," Emery said, not unkindly. "Tegwin Bryn. And how did you come to be bonded to the Lord of Shadows?" She told them everything: her flight from Gareth, the wrong carriage, the 7-night bargain, how Anurin had kept his word, offered her protection, how she'd chosen to stay beyond the agreed time, how the blood bond had formed not through coercion but through consent freely given. "Twice he fed from me," she concluded. "Both times at my request. I understood the consequences. I chose them." Murmurs rippled through the gathered vampires. Emery's raised a hand for silence. "And yet you are changing," he observed. "I can smell it on you, vampire essence bleeding into mortal blood. You're becoming something neither fully human nor fully turned. Such things are forbidden by covenant law. They end in madness." "Do they?" Tegwin challenged. "Or is that just what we're told to discourage experimentation?" "Dangerous ground." Several vampires hissed, offended by her boldness. But Emery's merely studied her with interest. "You have courage," he said. "Foolish courage, perhaps, but courage nonetheless. Tell me, do you wish to be fully turned?" Tegwin paused. This was it, the choice. "I want autonomy. If I choose transformation, I want it to be my decision, made with full knowledge and without coercion. If I choose to remain as I am, changing slowly through the bond, I want that respected." "The bond could kill you," Murig interjected, "or drive you mad. We've seen it before, mortals who tried to walk between worlds. They all failed." "They weren't me," Tegwin said. "Arrogance is knowing my own mind," she finished. "I'm not naive. I understand the risks. But I also understand that love requires risk, and I love him." She gestured to Anurin. "Completely. Impossibly. I choose this bond. I choose the uncertainty. And I choose the right to determine my own fate." Silence fell over the cathedral. Snow drifted through the broken ceiling, settling on ancient stone. Finally, Emery spoke. "Lord Anurin, come forward." Anurin joined Tegwin in the center, his presence solid and steady. "You've heard her testimony," Emery said. "Do you dispute any of it?" "No," Anurin replied. "She speaks truth." "Then tell us, why did you bind her? Was it loneliness, obsession, a desire to replace what you lost with Olwen?" Anurin flinched at the name. "All of those things," he admitted. "At first, but now," he looked at Tegwin. "Now it's because I believe she's stronger than I am, because she has faith where I have only fear, because she makes me want to be more than the monster I've convinced myself I deserve to be." "Love, then," Emery said. "Yes. And if the bond fails, if she dies or goes mad, as others have, then I'll die with her," Anurin said simply. "I won't survive losing her, not again." Murig laughed. How touching, how tragic, and how utterly irrelevant to covenant law. The rules exist for a reason, to prevent exactly this kind of reckless sentimentality. Half-turnings create unstable creatures that threaten both our secrecy and our survival. The girl should be fully turned or fully released, nothing in between. "I disagree," another voice said. A vampire stepped from the shadows, female, ancient, wearing crimson, Tegwin of House Blood, known for her wisdom. "The covenant was written to prevent forced turnings," Tegwin said. "To protect mortals from vampires who would transform them without consent. But this?" She gestured to Tegwin and Anurin. "This is different. She chose." He honored that choice. "They're exploring a bond that could, potentially, offer a third path, one where transformation is gradual, consensual, safer, or catastrophic," Murig countered. "Perhaps," Tegwin agreed. "But forbidding experimentation because it might fail is how we stagnate, how we become rigid, how we lose the capacity for growth." She looked at Emery's. "I say we give them dispensation. Let them continue the bond under observation. If it succeeds, we learn something new. If it fails," she shrugged, "then we've confirmed the old warnings." "You'd risk her life for knowledge?" Moirich demanded. "I'd respect her autonomy," Tegwin corrected. "She's not a child. She understands the stakes. Who are we to deny her the right to choose her own fate?" Debate erupted. Vampires arguing over covenant law, over mortal rights, over the nature of transformation. Tegwin stood in the center of it all, holding Anurin's hand, feeling the bond pulse between them like a lifeline. Finally, Emrys raised his hand. Instant silence. "We will vote," he declared. "All in favor of granting dispensation, allowing the bond to continue under observation. With quarterly reports to the conclave, raise your hand." Tegwin's hand went up immediately. Then another vampire. And another. Slowly, more hands rose until over half the conclave had voted in favor. Mirig's expression was thunderous. "This is a mistake." "Noted," Emrys said dryly. "The dispensation is granted. Lord Anurin, Miss Bryn, you may continue your bond. But understand, we will be watching. Any sign of instability, any threat to the covenant, and we will intervene. Permanently." "We understand," Anurin said. "Thank you," Tegwin added, voice shaking with relief. "Don't thank us yet," Emrys warned. "You've been given permission to walk a razor's edge. One misstep, and you both fall. I hope, for your sake, that your love is as strong as you believe." The conclave dissolved, vampires disappearing back into shadow. Soon only Mirig remained, his gray eyes fixed on Tegwin with an expression she couldn't read. "You won today," he said quietly. "But the game isn't over, little bird. You'll change," he'll falter. "And when you do, I'll be waiting to say I told you so." He smiled without warmth. "I hope you prove me wrong, but I don't think you will." He vanished into the night, leaving frost patterns on the stone. Tegwin sagged against Anurin, exhaustion crashing down. "Is it always like this? Your world?" "Usually worse," he admitted, holding her close. "But we survived. Together. What happens now?" "Now." He looked down at her, and his smile was almost hopeful. "Now we go home, and we figure out what forever looks like, one day at a time." They walked out of the ruined cathedral into the snow. Behind them, the building groaned and settled, holding its secrets. Ahead, the night spread vast and uncertain. But they were together, and for now, that was enough. Chapter 12, Epilogue Spring in Shadow. The greenhouse bloomed eternal. 6 months had passed since the conclave. 6 months of learning, growing, changing. Tegwin stood among the roses, feeling their warmth, and marveled at how different she felt. Not vampire, not fully, but not human anymore either. The transformation was slow, just as they'd hoped. Her senses had sharpened. She could hear Anurin's piano playing from 3 floors away, could see perfectly in darkness, could sense the presence of other vampires before they arrived. Her strength had increased, her healing quickened, and her aging had stopped, or at least slowed to a crawl, imperceptible to mortal. Time. The quarterly reports to the conclave showed positive results. No madness, no instability, just gradual integration of vampire essence into mortal form, facilitated by the blood bond and Anurin's careful feeding once a week now. Never too much, always with consent. She was becoming something new, not Dhampir, not half-turned, something without name, without precedent. Tegwin had visited twice, studying Tegwin with clinical fascination. "You're adapting," she'd said. "Your body is learning to accept and integrate his essence rather than reject it. Remarkable." "Will it last?" Tegwin had asked. "I don't know," Tegwin had admitted. "You're writing new rules. But so far, you're thriving." The estate was changing too. With Tegwin's presence, mortal warmth even diminished. The house had begun to wake. The blue room no longer felt haunted. Flowers grew in the greenhouse with renewed vigor. Even the portraits seemed less watching, more welcoming. Anurin had removed the silver, chains from the torture chamber, melted them down and forged them into a sculpture for the garden, something beautiful from instruments of pain. His penance was over. He'd finally forgiven himself for Olwen, for the centuries of isolation, for being a monster who'd learned to be a man. Tegwin heard footsteps behind her, perfectly silent, but she felt him through the bond before he arrived. "You're smiling," Anurin observed, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "What are you thinking about?" "How strange this all is," she said, leaning into his chest. 6 months ago, I stumbled into a carriage by accident. Now I'm here, turning into something that shouldn't exist, in love with a vampire who's learning how to hope. Regrets? His question was light, but she felt the fear beneath it through the bond. "None," she said firmly. "You? Only that I didn't find you sooner." He turned her to face him, though perhaps the timing was perfect. "I needed those 2 centuries alone to learn how to deserve you." "That's a romantic thing to say," Tegwin teased. "Careful, people might think you've gone soft." "I have," he agreed. "Completely. Irreparably. You've ruined me for brooding isolation." She laughed, and the sound echoed through the greenhouse like bells. They stood together among summer flowers while winter raged outside, two beings who shouldn't fit but did, who'd chosen love over logic and risk over safety. "The Conclave wants another report next month," Aneurin said. "Emery's himself this time. He's curious about your progress. Will he try to stop us?" "I don't think so. You're proving that there's another way, that transformation doesn't have to be violent, that bonds can be gentle." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You're teaching an immortal species how to evolve. That's extraordinary." "We're teaching them," Tegwin corrected. "I couldn't do this alone." "Neither could I," Aneurin admitted. "I needed you to believe in me before I could believe in." Outside. The first hints of spring touched the frozen garden. Snow melted. Green things stirred beneath dead earth. The estate was healing, slowly, mirroring its inhabitants. "I've been thinking," Tegwin said carefully, "about the future. If this continues, if I keep changing at this pace, I might live as long as you, maybe longer. Does that frighten you?" "Sometimes," she admitted. "But mostly it makes me curious. What does eternity look like when you're not alone? What do we do with all that time?" "Whatever we want," Aneurin said. "Travel, learn, help others who are caught between worlds, like you were. Build something that lasts." He paused. "Or we could just stay here and read every book in the library. That would take at least a century." "Ambitious," Tegwin said, smiling. "I have time. We have time." They kissed in the greenhouse, surrounded by impossible flowers, and the house sighed with something like contentment. Above them, the glass ceiling showed stars, beginning to fade as dawn approached. Aneurin would need to retreat soon, find shelter from the sun he still couldn't face. But they had hours yet, hours to exist in this in-between space, neither fully day nor fully night, neither fully mortal nor fully immortal. Hours to prove that love didn't have to be tragic, that choosing each other, every day, was its own form of forever. And in the blue room, the carved message Olwen had left seemed to fade, or perhaps it was just easier to read now, with new eyes. "I'm so cold. I can't remember warmth." But the house was warm now, filled with life and laughter and the sound of a piano playing something that wasn't sad. The curse had finally broken, not with violence or sacrifice or any of the dramatic gestures stories demanded, but with patience, with trust, with two people who'd stumbled into each other's darkness and decided to build light. Outside, the sun rose slowly over the estate. Aneurin left for his chambers, kissing Tegwin's hand, before retreating, and Tegwin stood alone in the greenhouse, feeling his presence through the bond even at distance, and knew with certainty, this was only the beginning. Their story would continue messy and uncertain and perfectly imperfect, but it would continue, together, always.